nicht funktioniert.
Wonderful. Meeting is now streaming
So,
live.
yeah,
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
it's coming right along. Okay, I think we might actually be live.
Looks like it.
Yes, we are live. Hello, everyone.
Hello, party people.
So I'm just checking
I'm assuming
everything.
there's a party out there somewhere.
And it's good to see it's not only the second live stream of the day for me, but Hedwig is also there. Welcome back. We just did a tech forward webinar right
I
before
love
this,
it.
so I'll just stay down here in my basement. As you can see, Jonathan is not with us, but he will join us later. He still has family duties, I
Parental
think.
duties, yes.
Yeah, that's just down to time zones and stuff like that. You know how it goes. But just to say hello to my lovely co-hosts, Sarah Hickey, joining us from Oberhausen. Is that correct?
Yes, I am
Somewhere
in Germany
Western
now.
Germany.
Exactly. In Germany, in Oberhausen, my hometown, and to my new apartment in my little winter garden.
Yes, looking lovely. And Alex, you're joining us as always from Munich.
Absolutely. Still from the
Beautiful.
old apartment. Next time I'll be joining you from the new apartment. Not that it matters on a podcast, but it matters to
So
me.
exciting, so exciting. So I can see Jonathan was just texting us, so he should be with us
He's
very soon.
en route.
Nice.
Great. So thanks to Rebecca and
Oh,
Sonia for
yes.
confirming that we are in fact live. That's good to know.
Yeah, excellent.
I guess we should do this more often. We're not really used to sort of live streaming this. I don't know. So, but I guess we should dive right in, shouldn't we?
Yes, let's go for
we
it.
should.
We should
Let's
start.
do it. I'm just
Okay.
thinking we should have totally done like a live bingo thing. Every time somebody's not unmuted on Zoom or something. Some fun stuff.
Okay. Well, you can do that on
Just
YouTube.
occurred to me. Yes.
You can do bingo on YouTube. We don't have a prize or anything, but
You will
eternal
win our
fame is
ever-loving,
yours. Yeah.
yes,
And gratitude.
our undying love and gratitude.
Exactly. Exactly. That's it. Okay.
All right,
Off we
let's do it.
go. Well, this is just for the podcast, but anyway. So, hello and welcome to Troublesome Terps, the podcast about topics that keep interpreters up at night. And today we are going to be talking about a topic that is probably keeping a lot of people up at night at the moment. It's how to start out as an interpreter. We're also streaming this live at the moment to YouTube. So a very friendly hello to everyone who is joining us at the moment. And of course, hello to my lovely co-host. First of all, hello to Sarah Hickey. How are you tonight?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm good. Keeping busy after having moved to Germany and a lot
Never
of
a dull
other.
day.
Yeah, exactly. Never a dull day. But yeah, excited to be here because I missed the last episode, so it's good to be
You
back.
did.
And we missed you in the last episode as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you heard his dulcet tones already. That's Alexander Gansmeyer, the busy interpreter joining us from Munich. Hello.
Hello, this is Alex. With which language may I seduce you today?
Yeah.
This is a little bit of an insider, but it's great to be here. It's kind of weird that we're streaming this live. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it is, but a lot of fun.
It
So
is.
I'm keeping half an eye, no, actually a full eye on the chat. So if you want to contribute in the chat, feel free to do so. So that's, I think, is a good occasion to say thank you to everyone who did contribute to our little collection exercise before
Absolutely.
this show. We were asking you on social media for your experience, for your tips, your tricks, the things that were surprising when you started out as an interpreter. So we're gonna get to that. We have a long list of very interesting stuff that we wanna
A very long
get
list,
to.
right?
Yes. So
With
it's
a
great.
lot
We
of
should again.
contributions.
This is probably something we should do more often. Is just ask people for their input because it's really great to hear from you, and it feels less like we're in a bit of an echo chamber, talking just amongst ourselves, which is great too. So that is fine. But oh, here is Jonathan. Let's bring Jonathan in.
Nice, perfect timing.
Oh,
And
awesome.
we'll put him on the spot right away, I guess. Or we can start and so he can just ease his way into the show. No, there he is.
There he goes. Jonathan is connecting to audio. Hello, Jonathan. So
Hello
what do you
there.
think? Yes or no?
Good evening. What was that?
Yes or no to what?
I don't know. We just tried to put you on the spot.
Yeah, just say yes or no.
Just say yes or no. It's a very simple
Banana.
question.
The good, the good thing is we
That is a
already did the
correct
intro and
answer.
everything, so we can jump right in. But we'll give you a little bit of time to breathe. And
To
we
adjust.
we were going to start actually with a little bit of a look back in time, a jump back in time, and just talk about how we actually started out. And I think, Sarah, we agreed that you were going to go first. So why don't you give us your interpreting origin story in a few
Okay.
words?
Sure. I was just thinking that maybe I'm not even the best person to talk about this because I've probably done the least interpreting out of all of us. Well, not probably, definitely. But so
It's not a contest, don't worry.
okay. No,
Oh,
but
I'm sure it is.
It's easy for Alex to say. He's done clearly the most. So, you know.
yes. But yeah, so I did my master's in conference interpreting in Galway at NUIG, which was amazing. And then essentially, as soon as I finished, I had to go back to my old job working in customer service because I was pretty broke after being a student for a year. And, it takes a while to get jobs. And then, well, I was based in Ireland at the time. And of course, there's some demand for my language combination, which is German A, English B, but it's maybe not the most hopping market for that. So it was a bit slow in the beginning. There were some requests coming in, and I lost a bunch of assignments due to price. Because, I guess that's, something you have to, well, everyone has to deal with. But it was hard because I couldn't wait to get started. And I was really excited that some assignments came my way. But then I also didn't want to budge on price because, this is something I guess we were told the whole time in interpreting class, and which is also, I think, the right thing to do is to not, undercut and ruin the market, and then to better wait until something else comes around, which took a while. And in the end, I got my first gig then through one of my former teachers. And he was excited that there was that he had a booth partner now that he could work with. So it worked out pretty well for both of us. Yeah, and so it was very difficult, I think, to get started if I wanted to just be an interpreter, to be honest. But yeah, well, a few months after my degree, I got offered a job doing research, interpreting research. So
And the rest is history, as they say.
yeah, pretty much, because
Global head of interpreting research. Extraordinaire.
yeah, and I mean, I can still interpret while working for NIMSY. I have that flexibility, and it's also, encouraged, which is really nice. But yeah, since then, I've basically just been occupied with NIMSY, to be honest, except maybe every now and again. Now that I moved back to Germany, I would actually love to try and get into the market here, because from what everyone's told me, German English is the combination on the market here. So
Pretty much, right?
yeah, and I still love
Sounds about
interpreting,
right.
so it's I would like to do it more again. And yeah, but I think it's really it was very difficult to even get the first assignment in Ireland, and to not to kind of stand your ground, to set yourself up professionally, to not undercut just to get the first job. It's difficult because I think there's so much you're being told about, don't make this wrong move and don't make this wrong move, and everyone's like, it's such a small community. If you make one mistake, this is your reputation ruined forever.
Yeah.
You're like, fresh out of the university, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, totally.
But it's interesting to me that you mentioned the sort of a strong role of your teachers helping you, get a foot in the door, as it were, because that was certainly something that we got in a lot of the replies from the listeners out there, and we asked some of the teachers as well for their input. So there were a lot of comments to the effect of, don't be afraid to ask your teachers for help, because I think I don't know if you can confirm this, but when you're still at university, I think you get a lot of advice on your technique and how to do proper interpreting and on language stuff and note-taking skills and what have you. But sometimes there isn't really enough time about the whole business stuff and how to start
Right.
out right. And there's a lot of these things sort of floating around is don't ruin the market, don't push the prices too low. And I think it's very confusing in the beginning because you're so afraid of, and as you just said, you're so afraid of possibly making mistakes and stuff like that. So I don't know what was that like for you guys when you started out on the freelance market? Did you have that support from your teachers? Was it more just you on your own? What did that feel like?
No, I think from my experience was sort of similar to Sarah's, I have to say. So when I was in Munich at the language college, I got my first job from one of the teachers because they had a Spanish booth and an English booth, and one of the English interpreters got sick, and then they just kind of brought me along on the ride. So everything was kind of already taken care of, and I just jumped in to fill that gap. And it was kind of nerve-wracking, but really nice at the same time, actually working with your teachers. And yeah, they helped me throughout the entire process. They helped with the preparation, with the invoicing, all of that. It was a really nice and comfortable experience as a big first job. And then when I was in the UK, after I did during my masters, we already got like a few jobs here and there, either from the faculty or from some agencies in the UK. I remember I was doing like some public service interpreting during that time as well, just because you try to you do what you can. And then I got really lucky because after I did the masters, I was fortunate enough to teach at university for a year, which, I always like to joke, it kind of covered the basics like rent, and then with all the odd jobs that I got, I could pay for luxury like food. And yeah, and then slowly I just started building up the jobs. Uh, there was We did actually have a module called business consultancy at university, which kind of was supposed to deal with all of those things. We had like checklists. If the client calls you, you need to check for this, this, and this. So we had a lot of very hands-on things, but then still stuff like just very basic stuff that everybody has to do, like taxes or whatever it is. Those kinds of things you never learn at university. You never learn at any school. They tell you, yeah, you're gonna have to do this, but then those things are just get on top of those quickly. That was like one of my nightmares.
Sink or swim, yeah.
Yeah, sink or swim.
Yeah. But I guess for the tech stuff, there's other.
Pay a tax advisor.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Either you do
just
that
use
or
online or
there's-
just use online accounting and save yourself the time.
Yeah.
As soon as I
Yeah.
discovered a service that does all my bookkeeping automatically for me, and I just have to tick to say that's correct,
Yeah.
that changed
Or that.
things. It's worth. I mean,
Well, back in my days, we didn't have the internet. Joke. This is a joke.
yeah, but I would say to any student that's listening to this, it looks a lot. Some of these online accounting services, especially if you want, for example, I have to pay for the most expensive package because I accept transactions in 4 currencies, and I insist that my TransferWise, which is how I deal with most of my foreign currency, is checked automatically. There's only one online service that will do that, and they will only do that on the most expensive package. But considering it's cut my annual accounting down from 2 to 3 days to an hour,
Yeah.
I would say it's worth it.
Yeah.
It is totally worth it.
But
I totally agree.
Yeah, Jonathan, what was the transition like for you from uni to the real life out there?
Depressing,
Yeah.
awful. So I kind of could have asked for help from my teachers, and actually there was a tutor who I think I mentioned, well, a visiting guest interpreter who I think I mentioned on a previous show, who was really helpful. But what happened to me, and I don't think I've told this story, is that we were told, and it's true, there isn't enough work anywhere in the UK really outside of London that you can be just an interpreter, and even inside London it can be tricky apparently. And so we were advised that if you had French, the best thing to do is to sign on with the French Secretariat. So I went to do that. The first and only project that I got offered through the Secretariat clashed with a training with something that I already had on, so I couldn't take it. And ever since then, I've never heard from that Secretariat. And so it was about 2 years after I graduated, that I got my first interpreting job. I'd done a lot of translation work. I tried to do the whole part-time job thing. It just didn't work. And so my first 2 years were pretty awful, really. Eventually, I got my first interpreting job actually because of a recommendation from a classmate. And I had a mini panic attack in the booth in the first job, but eventually got through it. And then it was quite another few months before I got the second one. It's just because it's such a quiet market. But on the other hand, because I realized from day one that, unless we were going to move to France, which for various reasons wasn't on the cards, then I was going to have to learn to do other things anyway. Although the first 2 to 3 years were absolutely horrible and I made some mistakes and things, they taught me a lot more about kind of finding other ways of earning money and what other skills I had than I would have learned in another market. I'm kind of glad of that, because when you get things like Brexit hitting or COVID hitting, it's not that interpreting is my only source of income. So I can, income drops, but it doesn't drop as much as if I'd been like a 100% interpreter and suddenly COVID hits.
But can I just, because I was talking to a friend of mine about that exact situation, because my only source of income is interpreting. And in the beginning, March was everything got canceled. This has nothing to do with the topic. So maybe I'm sorry for all the people live. You're going to have
You're on the right show, Alex.
Yeah, you're on the right show, but we can cut this out for the episode. But when COVID hit in the beginning, especially in April, there were no bookings. So I was really worried about that. You have savings and you can weather the storm. And we were talking about whether it's smart to just focus on interpreting, because I have to say that I bounced back quite nicely. Like, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now, and also how quickly things have changed again for the clients that I have. And I completely attribute that to the fact that this is all I do. Like, I work with them, I'm here for them, I organize stuff for them, I organize the teams for them. And so I had that kind of going forward. Whereas on the flip side, if you have a side job, you have that security. So I think there's like two ways of looking at it. Do you know what I mean? Like, does that make any sense?
I think, yeah, and I think one thing I've noticed is because I always had to do interpreting, and as I think 90% of the interpreters around here have to do, I had the opportunity to do other stuff. And so, like, the consulting side of interpreting I naturally found easier because I was used to having to pull things together, and also I was used to negotiating with magazine editors and with publishers. So when a client comes in and says, can I have X? I'm quite happy to sit and explain why. Well, you can't have X, but I can give you Y. That negotiation stuff is something that I got used to doing. Whereas I think if I'd just gone through I'm an interpreter, I don't know if I would have become a consultant interpreter if I hadn't had to diversify from the beginning. And also, if I hadn't gone into research as well, I'm not sure if had become a consultant interpreter.
But I think that's a really good thing that you bring this up, because I think. So I became a consultant interpreter kind of by accident, just because, the few jobs that I got in the beginning always kind of required some finagling and like arranging stuff and organizing stuff. It was never like a nice job that was just presented on a platter. They came very few and far between. So I always just kind of had to figure it out. And I just kind of slid into becoming the consultant by accident, just because it's what you kind of had to do. You had to always arrange the equipment and the booth mate and whatever, and over time it kind of scales up. And what I would like to say to people out there who are listening to this who are just starting out, don't be afraid to take on these jobs. I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. They called me and I was like, they were like, I don't know, we need 4 booths, Chinese, Korean, French, and English. And I was like, sure, no problem. Let's do it. And then they hung up the phone, and then I had a panic attack. And I was like, okay, let's do this. We're going to do this somehow. Somehow it's going to work. And it always worked. And I think I'm sure we'll come to that later again. And Jonathan, you also said it, and Sarah said it, and it's very true. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. If you're a little bit in over your head, or if you're wondering, should I do A, should I do B? There's tons of people who are happy to help you, whether it's your teachers or you're in, I don't know, a mentoring scheme, or whether it's us, send an email to troublesometerps.com or whatever,
I would also say things like, don't be afraid to go and learn other stuff. One thing that I wish we had been taught at university is your knowledge of the business world is as important as your knowledge of interpreting. So your knowledge of how contracts work, your knowledge of how agreements work, some jobs you have to have every single booth filled before you send the quote. Other jobs you can send the quote because you know the list of people you're going to get, you know how much, it's fine. And also the one thing that I wish I'd learned earlier, which I'm only just learning the importance of just now, is for goodness sake, write down your procedures. So if you have a
It's
certain
kind of the
procedure,
checklist thing
yeah.
Alex mentioned earlier. Yeah.
So I accidentally messed
That
up a
was
quote.
invaluable. Yeah.
Well, I accidentally messed up a quote very, very recently and had to go back to the client. Thankfully, they had an additional question, so it was a nice opportunity to say,
Oh yeah.
actually, the quote's a little bit more than I said because I messed something up. But now I have a written procedure to check when I'm doing a quote because it was one little thing that I forgot to check. So now I have a written procedure for it. So even if you're like me and you like to do stuff free form and you don't like to be told what to do, write down your procedures. You will thank yourself later for it and put them all on like your desktop, just in a file marked quoting procedure or consulting procedure or
Yeah.
just a file that's right there that you just open reflexively as a reflex to get everything right.
Alex, how did you get started? How was it for you? Because you obviously had a very different thing going on than we did.
I have a very different thing going on. Yes, indeed. No, but I mean, I think it was the usual stuff to some extent because I did quite a bit of freelancing sort of already in university. So doing sort of small jobs at the university or maybe for small companies on the side. And then, mostly due to my language combination, I kind of ended up in the whole EU racket, I guess. So I had Romanian, and that was kind of, a language that was interesting to the institutions back then. So that's the direction I ended up going into. And usually, I guess the procedure is that you become a freelancer, and then you apply for an accreditation test, and then maybe you get invited, and maybe it takes longer until you get invited. In my case, because of the circumstances, simply I went straight for a competition, so an actual test to become a staffer, because they were looking for people with Romanian at the time. It was just when Romania was about to join the EU, and basically did it the wrong way around. So I went straight into the competition and somehow passed. Still don't know how. And then I freelanced for a few months. So I was on the list because of the successful competition. And then, it just usually takes them a while and until they figure out all the paperwork. And then I became a staffer. So it was fairly straightforward in that way. And what I think is similar to the stories that you were telling is that I got a lot of support from great teachers at university. So I may have talked about my Romanian teacher, who I really still love because she had so much passion for the language, and she also sort of got me in that direction of going deeper with Romanian, and then signing up for that competition and so on and so forth. So yeah, so from that perspective, I think it was maybe similar to your story. I never had to get into the whole business stuff, so I had to file a few tax declarations while I was still a freelancer, but I'm kind of happy I don't have to do that on a regular basis, to be very honest.
The bonus of being a freelancer is if someone says to me, can you come to such and such a place and do a speech, which is happening more and more at the moment, I can just say yes, and I've already got an accounts bucket that it goes into. It's not a problem. I'd imagine for staffers, if someone says, can we pay you X number of euros to go and speak somewhere, then you have like a whole list of permissions. If someone says to me, can you go somewhere, I just go, yeah, okay.
So maybe you ask your wife first.
so long as the family calendar's clear, it's totally fine.
Yes, exactly.
And actually, with the increasing number of virtual stuff, the only thing I have to work out now is around toddler nap times.
Yes,
that's a good point.
But
speaking of all the virtual stuff, I think it's actually a good segue, since we're announcing segues.
Are we? Are we though?
Well, when aren't we? Into how things might be a little bit different if you're starting out as an interpreter in 2020, because I think things might be a little bit different. I don't know. It's just a hunch.
Did anything happen? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I don't think anything's happened. It's been very quiet lately. Yeah. So
So I think we just have to establish when did we all. So I started it at around 2005. So I guess that's 15 years already. Just so
Mine
we have a
is.
baseline, what are we comparing 2022?
I'm not sure we should disclose our ages here. This kind of is,
Not talking age.
Well, it's easy to kind of.
I officially started on my birthday in 2008.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
That- that-
actually, my first day of class for the masters, I turned 30 that day. On the very first day.
Great
So,
timing.
Yeah, fantastic. Could
Wait,
not
so
go
am
out
I
the
the
night before.
youngest? I thought
Are
you
you the
was the
youngest?
youngest.
I just look very young, but I'm actually very old.
I was going to say, did you
Ah.
finish your masters yesterday, Sarah?
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Wow. Well, I think so. I've been freelancing. I think I had my first job in 2010 or 2011. I think it was in 2011.
So, I mean, I now realise that I started freelancing in the middle of the credit crunch, which probably
Yeah.
explains why things were so far my business has had credit crunch, Brexit, COVID.
Oh dear. I was just going
Yeah.
to say, because Rebecca and Sonia were sharing in the chat as well, that 2020 is easy to compare because they both started out during the last financial crisis. So around
Oh,
2007, 2008.
Ouch.
That's a deja vu.
Yeah.
Yikes.
But see, the thing is about the thing is about the last financial crisis, and this is something I'm only realizing now, is in the last financial crisis, it was really easy to find the international sectors that were still growing. So although interpreting was rubbish, there were translation sectors that needed work. And so for a while, I did a lot of CV translation because, everyone was losing their jobs, which anyone who still does CV translation, you have my deepest respect. And I did some legal work. And I was told by my wife I wasn't a nice person if I was doing legal translation. So, but yeah, 2020 is a hard time to start. But on the other hand, I would say in some senses, the graduates now who are trained on the tech that didn't exist when we were training, apart from you, Sarah, that didn't really exist when we were training, I actually think that they've got an advantage because they're probably natives in remote simultaneous.
I would imagine that it helps, yeah, as well. I mean, during our training, we didn't do remote simultaneous, but we were introduced to interpreting from videos, for example. So that was like a first step in that direction. And from what I know, from what I've heard from NUIG, of course, this year, they had to do a lot of remote work. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think that's what I've heard, that there's been maybe a little bit of in-class training and then a lot of remote work because, yeah. And this is something I wanted to point out as well, because of course, if you're talking about the financial crisis, of course, it's never good to start during a financial crisis, understandably. But at least the financial crisis, in a way, it touched, like, it didn't necessarily touch all areas of society. It touched like the housing industry and the financial industry, and that had a knock-on effect on all sorts of businesses, of course. But like the situation we're in right now is they're affecting every aspect of life. And
Yes.
then, like you said, you have the added challenge of now everything has to be remote with few exceptions. So you also have to deal with new technologies. And so there's so much more to learn probably on top of that now.
I remember coming across a study and it surprised me. It was in a business book and they said there was a couple of studies done by Ivy League universities. And they found out that businesses that began during recessions tended to last longer and be more financially sound than businesses born during a boom time.
Makes sense.
So you think about all the businesses that were started during the dot-com bubble, like 1-2% of them survive more than a couple of years. The interpreters who are starting out now, it's going to be rough. But if you can build a business this year, there isn't much that's going to knock you back.
But Sonia in the YouTube comment just said something really, really interesting, and I completely agree with her. I think the people who are starting out now, they're not going to be that affected because this is the only market they know. You know what I mean? Like they're
it's a
starting out
different
into this
baseline,
market.
yeah.
It's a different baseline. I think the people, and she said this, so I didn't actually think it, she thought it. Thank you, Sonia. The people who started out 2 or 3 years ago who just found their footing, what did she say? They get the rug pulled out from under them. And that is exactly true. And I think that's really tricky. I think though there's a different challenge for the people who are starting out now or who are at university right now, and that's I think the kind of mindset challenge.
Mm.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who's a mentor in a mentoring program, and she's not the happiest person right now. So she's not exactly imparting a lot of enthusiasm and positivity into her mentee because she's like,
Not
"Well,
the
I'm
only
not getting
one,
any
yeah.
jobs. Why am I sugarcoating it? You know,
Mm.
find another job. Like this isn't great at the moment." And I'm like, "Well, I see why you would say that because you don't want to sugarcoat it, but then on the flip side, you also don't want to be like, find something else to do. This is doomed, you know." So I think they have to deal with that. I think once they make that through, I think
Mm.
Sonia's right. Like this is the only market they know. They will
Mm.
hear of the good old times as we always do, when interpreters were flown in, first class and the champagne lifestyle.
I was
Well,
actually thinking about that. Yeah, but sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I feel like that comment makes a lot of sense with if you've just broken into the market and then the
Mm.
rug gets pulled out from under you.
Mm.
But at the same time, yeah, I would imagine that if you're starting out right now, there are a lot of other challenges there as well because might be first of all even harder to get jobs and exactly you don't know the technology and what does it mean then to not undercut or ruin the market because this is not that it wasn't there before but it's less established, you know less about it with what should you be charging, what is okay, and how,
Mm.
it's not that there's no rules there, but there's maybe fewer rules or newer ones that not
Mm.
everyone knows yet. So
Mm.
maybe that can be a good thing too because you can be part of developing that market more.
Mm.
But yeah, different challenges maybe.
I'm beginning to see remote interpreting jobs come in, and I've changed my view from previously I wouldn't consult on remote to now I will. And I'm finding as a consultant that it's harder to get good interpreters than it was before because I've for example a recent job that I was putting together a quote for, I went through 4 interpreters for a certain language and only one of them was either available or willing to do remote. And I've also come across cases where I also came across cases where preparing that quote of interpreters saying, "Oh, I've just decided to leave the profession." So
Mm.
if you're a new student, there could be more opportunities for you because there are interpreters thinking about leaving. There are interpreters who are thinking, well, remote's just going to be a flash in the pan, so I'll just ride it out. I've got enough savings.
Mhm.
And so actually, if you've got your wits about you, I usually feel strange receiving kind of emails from people saying, "Hi, I'm a new student. Yeah, hi, I'm a new graduate. Do you have any work?" I usually feel really odd because there often isn't that much around. But actually, if graduates write the right email to the right consultants at the right time, they could actually find themselves picking up work because they'll be more used to it than some interpreters are.
Yeah, and I also feel like, I mean, if people are saying now, oh, this isn't, this job isn't going to last. I mean, the pandemic is also not going to last forever. I mean, it's lasting a while now and it's going to last for another while, but it's not going to be forever, fingers crossed, right? But other pandemics went. We got rid of the Black Plague eventually. So,
Eventually,
no,
yes.
I mean, okay, this is, I'm exaggerating, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there
Moving
will
the
always
goalposts.
be one way or
Would not
another.
recommend.
No.
There will always be a demand for language services and for interpreting one way or another, but the market might change. That's the difference. And to what Jonathan was saying as well is I can understand that people go, oh, you're a new student, so you're inexperienced, so maybe we shouldn't hire you. And not even referring directly to you, Jonathan, but in general,
Mm.
people who hire interpreters. But it's like, how do you get your first job then? This is not just a question technically for interpreting, but for lots of markets where it's like, you have to have experience to work in this job. And like, well, how do you get this experience?
Okay, but I do think at the moment there's sort of a unique opportunity for young interpreters to get jobs more easily, perhaps, because a lot of established interpreters might have clients who have to switch to remote, who might be doing a conference on Zoom, and the more experienced interpreters might not have any experience on that, but because they've been busy, they have families to deal with or whatever, and the young interpreters have done tons of webinars on Zoom. They've done all the tests on all the different platforms. They really know what's going on, and so if you have, I mean, this is true for a lot of young interpreters that I know, like they've done a crap ton of webinars on, like honestly, didn't we all do a crap ton of webinars during the pandemic? I swore I was never going to go on Zoom again, and here we are tonight. But but they actually have the opportunity if they're in contact with these people to be like, if you ever have a job on Zoom, maybe not as overt, but they can offer their help in establishing proper RSI kind of protocols for them, or show them the ropes, show them how the technology works, and in that way you can sort of get roped into their teams possibly. So maybe it's actually now easier because you have a concrete incentive to book these young interpreters, or at least kind of consult them on what you can offer to your clients as a more experienced interpreter. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
I would also say that while at uni, I underestimated the importance of recommendations. And so there was one job that I wasn't consultant on, but I was senior interpreter on. And I found out that my booth mate was chosen because she came highly recommended by someone else. And, she came into the job kind of cowering. And I said, what's up? She said, I don't like to tell you this, but this is my first paid job. I said, no problem. I'll take you under my wing. And actually, there are certain jobs where you could, it could easily be your first job. But, there are certain interpreting projects that I look at and go, right, I really need a super experienced team. And there are other projects you look at and go, this is a job that's okay for your first paid job. We know the difference. And so, yeah, I think young interpreters, they probably have better business skills than we did coming out of university. I don't know about anyone else, but my business skills sucked. And so actually they have a chance to leapfrog some of the more experienced interpreters because they know the tech, they have been taught more business skills, they are social media natives, they can just get on with it. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if the interpreters who graduated kind of this summer become consultants far earlier than we did.
I mean, sorry, I definitely agree that, to what you're saying with the current situation offering more opportunities right now, also for young interpreters, because maybe some of the more experienced ones either don't want to do it or can't do it. And, you can get a foot in the door that way. But, well, again, remote is one option. But what about the traditional on-site, or when we're not in a pandemic? Of course, now this is a situation, but in general, how do you break in, right? Is it mostly, I would say, through contacts, right? Like mentors, teachers, someone who's willing to say, okay, this is your first job, but I'll take you with me anyway, or I will vouch for you or recommend you or something like that, I was
going to say something similar. So because we were asking the question, how is 2020 different from 2008, for example? And I don't think we have to necessarily make it about the pandemic, but something that I've been sort of jealous of is that a lot of professional associations nowadays have these mentoring programs. So where experienced colleagues take people under the wings again and help them out. And there's this sort of direct relationship, which I think makes it much easier to ask quote unquote stupid questions in a safe environment, I guess. And also increasingly the online practice groups and also real life practice groups that have been popping up, which I think is a fantastic initiative. So we had our local practice group at university, but I think as soon as we went sort of our separate ways after graduation, that was it. And now these other practice group are more institutionalized and more open and also work online these days, which is really great. So that's something that's also different compared to, I guess 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely more resources, more tools available, and just generally, I feel like a little bit of a higher degree of professionalization within the industry. I remember when I just graduated university, I put together a mentoring scheme for an association in the UK, and I presented it to them because they didn't have it. And they said, oh, no, we don't need an interpreting mentoring scheme. There's not enough of a demand. And I was like,
there is.
Well, I'm demanding, but no way, But yeah, it didn't
We know you're demanding, Alex. That's right.
Yeah, well, so, yeah. Anyways, but
also,
yeah, it's just changed. Yeah.
But yeah, just to make, sorry, Jonathan, but just to say that because Sarah, you said it's all about sort of connections and contacts. I think that is something that has changed because it used to be you have to know the right people, and now I think it's much easier to just connect to these existing networks online, practice groups, mentoring programs, that kind of thing. And that's I think a good thing. But Jonathan, go ahead. Sorry.
And also, so when I started out social media existed, I think. Yeah, it did. But not in the way it does now. So I find it really strange that I can like send a Twitter DM to a senior editor at a major publishing house and get a response.
Mm.
Everyone is so much more contactable now. Now, email probably is no longer the best way to contact people, but I was amazed how much work I got by hanging around translation and interpreting forums and just kind of chatting. And I remember once I got it was translation rather than interpreting, but someone sent me an email and said, I've seen your intelligent answers to discussions on this forum. Could you do this translation for me? And it was like a €300 job. And I got an interpreting job once because of an article I wrote in a magazine. So as much as everyone says don't spend too long on social media, I think for a new interpreter, it could actually be a really good way of building contacts, especially if you're in a quiet market. You can build contacts outside of your quiet market. And you know, once I got flown to a mystery location in the west of France because of contacts. So, you know,
That sounds very shady.
That sounds super shady.
It felt shady.
Yeah.
So it was a business interpreting job. I flew into Paris, got a TGV to a station I'm not allowed to mention, got picked up in a black luxury car.
Did they put a bag over your head?
Driven 2.5 hours to a chateau in the middle of nowhere and interpreted until 11 p.m.
What a story.
Yeah. And I didn't, because it was done at really, really quick notice. I got the call on the Wednesday, flew out on the Friday, I think. And to this day, I don't know the name of the interpreter who recommended me for it, because it was someone recommended someone else who recommended me.
How come you've never told this story? This is such an exciting story.
He's not allowed to talk about it. That's why.
Well, that must be it.
Well, the embarrassing thing was I woke up in the morning in this rather nice room, and Google said, "Would you like to rate Chateau such and such?" I'm like, no, I'm not supposed to be. No one's supposed to know I'm here. Yeah. So if you get a job with a non-disclosure agreement, turn off the location on your Google on your phone, please.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess there's a flip side to that as well, because we got a few comments about sort of colleagues, especially more experienced colleagues, not being quite as welcoming as it may have sounded just now. So there was this one comment where somebody was told by a colleague, "You would make a really good translator," and you know, there's just so much in that to unpack. But I think that the intention was clearly not a good one in that case, and you know, sometimes there's a little bit of, or maybe not just a little bit, sometimes there is sort of protectionism and trying to, you know, not let new people move into the market because, you know, this is my market, these are my clients. Was that something you guys ever experienced?
Luckily,
without having to name names, of course.
Yeah, luckily, I personally didn't experience that. Like I said, all the people I knew were very welcoming and helpful. But when I interviewed someone recently about an interpreting market, I won't even say the country.
Did you sign an NDA? Did they put a bag over your head?
No, I'm just trying to be polite. So,
do the right thing.
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
No. They were kind of saying, oh, there's all these, you know, new interpreters coming onto the market all the time, you know, because there's more interpreting programs now and there's new graduates every year. And the person didn't seem very happy about it. And I thought, well, it's just life, you know. Of course, like we were all, you know, you were a graduate once, no? And of course, there's new people coming onto the market all the time. And I get it. It means more competition, but, you know, like I don't know. I don't think that's a nice attitude to have, because it was more on the for me always on the flip side in our interpreting course, that we were more taught, well, this isn't a one man or woman job usually, right? Like you want to build good connections, and because you usually need a booth mate and you are working as a team, or you know. So I think this should always be the approach. But yeah, maybe some people don't see it that way.
I've never had protectionist colleagues. I think I've told this story before. I had someone who visited their university and told me I should seriously think about getting another job. that's about the most I've had on the job or in practice. But I do have, how do I phrase this? I do have colleagues that I prefer to work with. And I do have colleagues that if I'm consulting on a job, I have colleagues I contact first and colleagues I go to later and colleagues that I go to even after that. I do have preferences because one thing that it took me a while to learn was the vital importance of team dynamics. And, you know, there can be people who are great interpreters, but, you know, they just wouldn't mesh with the rest of the team.
Yep.
And so being a nice person is actually a job skill in interpreting.
For sure.
That's actually a comment that I think that came from Julia, who said that, you know, it's not only about the interpreting skills, there's so much more that sort of comes into play. And a lot of comments actually also said, you know, take your time and you kind of have to work through this. But I think Julia mentioned, organizational skills, good humor, small talk, chops, you know, and grit, you know, and then there was a nice terminological discussion in Russian how you would translate grit. But I think that's definitely something that you need, I think, is because kind of the flip side of taking your time and, you know, maybe spend some extra time in a country to fine-tune your languages. I think the flip side of that is also grit, because, you know, you can work on your languages as much as you like. You somehow have to, you know, put food on the table and stuff like that. And especially if you start out in the profession with a family, like some of us did, you know, that makes it a little bit more challenging, obviously.
But I do think it's true. I think a lot. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
No, but I think it's true with, you know, the grit and endurance, and, you know, it takes some time. It went really slow. Some of the one response, I think that was my favorite response to the whole question. It was just slow.
Yes,
exclamation
it
point.
was slow.
You know, unless you're extremely lucky, it's going to take some time. And I think I don't know any interpreter who just had huge success overnight. You know, it happened faster for some than for others. Unless you instantly start up for the institutions, maybe then it's a bit different because then you're in like a different environment. But even there, I'm pretty sure it takes some time to kind of get established in the booth and, you know, the different teams. So just it takes some time. I think in the beginning, there's nobody who starts out just doing interpreting. Even I did translations and I hate translations. So, you know, it just takes some time, and don't get discouraged. Be open in the beginning, but how should you say? I don't want to make it sound weird, but, you know, like, try different things, just see what kind of feels comfortable to you. And I had this conversation the other day with a colleague of mine from Spain who was struggling on taking certain remote jobs and not. And I was always like, just listen to your gut. If your gut says it's not right, then don't do it. You know, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the money. Even in the beginning, it's if you take the money and then you feel like total crap afterwards. Was it really worth it? So just listen to what feels right, and even in the beginning, listen to that gut feeling. But it's going to take some time.
I would also say one thing that I learned the hard way was if you have this niggling thing of, oh, I really should do such and such. So that one of the breaks for me, one of the things that changed my business was doing a PhD. And I remember one of the weirdly strong memories is I remember there's a set of double doors in the languages building at Heriot Watt. I remember pushing on those double doors, and as I pushed them, having handed in my master's dissertation for the second time, I felt this thing, go back and ask your master's supervisor about doing a PhD. And I went, no. 3 years later, after, you know, mental health issues and after a mental health episode and after just really not enjoying stuff, I was back. 3.5 years later, I was back doing a PhD, and I thought if I'd asked at that moment, I could have shortcutted 2-3 years of not enjoying myself, not doing what I really should have been doing. And for those 2-3 years when I was supposed to be doing marketing, I was reading research. And it took me a while to get the hint that if I'm reading research rather than doing marketing, that's probably not a good sign.
It's a hint.
Now I'm equally happy doing both, and someone taught me that you're supposed to enjoy your marketing as much as you enjoy the work. And I did not enjoy if the way that you're trying to get interpreting jobs feels like a chore, think about different ways of marketing.
That seems like a bold statement, though.
Well, I went through, so when I started out, I did the send your CV to any agency you can find thing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if I had been confident enough to do what I'm doing now, which is, the go to meetings, the meet people, the generally chat and make contacts and make friends style, I've had more opportunities doing that than I ever had through the, mail 100 CVs to 100 agencies, well, email 100 CVs to 100 agencies. There's enough different ways to market that actually there's one that you're going to enjoy doing if you find the right one. And because I thought it was normal to apply for however many pros job ads and Translators Cafe job ads and email so many agencies, my marketing felt like a drag, and I felt depressed trying to get work, so that when I actually did get the work, I was already feeling down to begin with.
I think that's the thing. I mean, it is a bold statement, but unless you work, for big institutions or big clients where you have a lot of repeat business, I guess marketing is just part of the job. And I guess if you can't enjoy that, then a big part of your job just kind of sucks. And I mean, you can just work through it, but I don't know, maybe life's telling you something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, but I do think also with I was in the exact same situation Jonathan was in at the beginning, because I was living in the UK, and the UK is a complete agency-dominated market. So I think in a market like that, it's also a completely different situation. It's a numbers game more than anything else. Like, you do have to contact all the agencies, and then eventually they will get back to you. And I think it was a chore, but I think it really you have to really know your market and really find out the approach of how the market works and how you get kind of a toe in the door, like half a toe, like a pinky toe.
I think I would have been actually better off trying to meet as many interpreters as I could, because the agency work that I got tended to come on the basis of my colleagues recommending me to the agency anyway. So a lot of the agencies wouldn't actually really respond until another interpreter said, you should get so-and-so.
That is very true.
If I had spent more time, putting feelers out, finding all the local interpreters, even finding the interpreters across the UK, I would have done a much better job, and I would actually have made more friends than the whole, they're an agency and such a list, I must send my CV to them. And the majority of them didn't get back, and the ones that did were because someone said, you should get Jonathan.
But can I just add to that real quick? And this also goes to a few of the comments that we got from I don't even know, a ton of people, from Danielle, from Kara, and from just a bunch of people. And I think it adds nicely to what you just said about how to meet people. In the beginning, you do have a lot of time. I remember in the beginning, I had nothing but time because I didn't have any work. And then eventually I got involved in the different associations. I volunteered. And
giving back to the profession.
Say again?
Sorry, giving back to the profession. Just wanted to underline your
giving
point.
Back to the profession. Sophie said that. And I think a lot of people in the beginning are hesitant because they're like, oh, who am I? Why should I be elected into an office in any association? Nobody knows me. What do I have to give? Well, you have time. You have time and energy. Nobody else has that anymore.
And enthusiasm, yes.
Yeah.
So true.
We don't have that anymore either. So just apply yourself in the associations and in the profession in that way. Yeah. And that way, you not only have something to do, which in the beginning sometimes I did not, and I was just sitting there and I'm like twiddling my thumbs and I'm like, well, what do I do now? This is kind of this is my job, but it's not really a job. And then you have something to do, and you actually also get to meet a ton of people, and even the people who you don't meet, they will still know who you are because you have an office. You might send out emails, mail blasts for whatever event you're organizing or doing whatever. So I think that is still legit even in Corona times. Host a Zoom, do something. There's tons of stuff to do.
And also things like, I think we underestimate the power of student writing about the experience of their first year. I tried to be like, I remember starting up my blog because blogging was the new way of marketing when I started out. And my first website, there's a joke about it in both a recent plenary speech and in my newest book. See, I did find the mention of the book. I joke about how awful it was and how it was grey on grey. And I wrote like a theorist. Oh, seriously. If I'd written like a normal human being and just said, this is what I'm going through, this is my experience. You don't want to tell people, what you ate for dinner, but, talking about the processes that you're doing and how you're trying to market, the fact of you writing that puts you out there, and you'll find people who, if you graduated a year ago, you'll find people who are just graduating going, oh, it's really encouraging what you wrote about your first year. Giving back in some way or other and just getting your name out there. You don't have to be a diva, but just be places where people are, whether it's online or in the real world with a mask on. Just be around people and get to know your association and your colleagues.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, get to know your colleagues. But on the flip side, I don't know. There's a lot of stories where people actually come into a market, especially here in Munich. I've heard two people tell me this story, and they came here and they did like handwritten notes to members of the IEK, and then they sent it and they delivered it like personally sometimes. And, get to know your colleagues, but don't. I feel like that was weird. I felt really uncomfortable when they told me those stories. Maybe that's just me, but, be normal.
Yeah, I think it's
That ship sailed a long time ago for most interpreters, Alex.
Well, that's true, and I'm including myself in that.
Sorry.
But just I don't know. Handwritten notes delivered to the door just feels weird.
Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a little difficult as well to find a balance with, you want to do everything right and you want to meet the right people and don't make the misstep or whatever, but at the same time you need to also remain you, right, and remain genuine and not be I don't know, I don't want to say kiss ass because I feel like that's a little mean and people are just trying, but just to still just be grounded somehow, just be you. But yeah, I think it's hard because I guess the theme that stands out from all the comments and from our stories is that it just takes time, and you take one step at a time, and you try to meet people, and then they can give you advice or they have contacts, and you take your first step. And to me, actually, going back to university to do my master's, I was just as much interested in getting value out of the actual the content, learning the skills and all that, as I was in making contacts, because I think that is one of the best things you can do by going back to university is you will get a network of people. You will meet experienced people. In our case, all of our teachers were experienced interpreters, and then you have this whole other group of people who are also then just trying to figure it out after, right? So, but I just mean I'm only mentioning this because people are saying go meet people and know your market and get to know the people in your market. But as a new student, you might go well, where do I find those people? Of course, online a little bit, sure. And, you can look out for networking events or something, but it's good then to, really utilize what your university or whatever course you're doing has to offer to at least point you in the right direction, probably.
National associations are great as well. I am very glad that I joined ITI as a student the one thing that I did wrong in those first 2-3 years, I didn't take full advantage of the advantages of being a member of ITI. I didn't push the doors that I should have pushed. And so, push every door that you can find to push and just give stuff a try. And I was joking with my PhD supervisor once saying, all the stuff that people are paying me to write about and, to set up interpreting teams is everything I learned in the first 3 weeks of my master's. It's, so I remember one job and the agency phoned me up and they're like, so this is the setup of the job. How many interpreters are we going to need? It's like, you're an agency. Okay, this is day one stuff.
You're supposed to know
we could
that.
do that. Yeah. But, people have mental blocks sometimes. And, simply because you're a graduate, you know more stuff about interpreting than clients. So, don't be overconfident, don't be daft, but use what you know already. And if a client says, I need interpreters for French, use your contacts to work it out, or just say, I know a really good consultant and ask them to do it for you.
That's the frustrating stuff sometimes, right? Is that your skills are so good when you're graduating, especially note-taking skills. They'll never be that good.
I know.
anymore, and you don't get to apply them, or just occasionally, and so you get rusty, and I think that's just very frustrating. But again, that's part of the landscape. So
But maybe we need to take a little bit of the pressure out of it as well. Like
Yeah.
I felt a lot of pressure in the beginning with, like I said, oh, don't make the wrong move, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be taught, how to do this right and everything, and not to undercut and all that. I agree with those things, but there's a little bit of that, like Jonathan was saying, like try out things, like
Yes.
be a little bit bold and like, don't go crazy, maybe off the rails, but there's certain things that you can probably try where you feel like, okay, maybe, if I like that it's not immediately over if you make a small mistake.
Yeah,
for sure.
And also that's how the profession moves forward, is people joining the profession, trying out new stuff, and some of it sticks because it's good. So, there's a value in that, I think.
That's how we got tablet interpreting. Someone tried it out.
Yeah, I wonder who tried that.
Or SimConsec, for that matter.
Oh,
But I actually want to add to what Sarah was just saying, and Jonathan, and the whole conversation's been about that. We're all going to make mistakes. Everybody's made mistakes. Nobody in this podcast has not made some serious mistakes in their career, and we've all survived. We're all here. Nobody's usually doing it on purpose, and people, if you learn from the mistake, if you don't keep doing it 20 times over after the first time, after someone's told you, hey, that wasn't cool, you should probably not do that. If you then do it 20 more times, then okay, we might have an issue. But if you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, I'll do it better next time, and then you do it better next time, it's fine. I think a good idea about interpreting, and this is kind of what I live by to this very day, is just fake it till you make it. If you get a job request and you have no idea what it is, unless it's like quantum physics and you're, I don't know, you don't want to blow up the universe, but usually just say yes to the job unless you feel super uncomfortable, and you'll figure it out, especially in the beginning, because you have nothing but time to prepare. You have colleagues you can ask. And that's the second thing that I want to mention is don't underestimate your network that you have when you've graduated. Because a lot of those people that I graduated with, I hired them. I work with them. They hire me because, we know each other. We know what we're good at. We know what we're bad at. We know how we can help each other. We just kind of, you have that rapport already because you went through university together. You've been in the booth a bunch of times.
Yeah.
You know other languages. They might know other people that you don't know because they live in another country. They joined a different association. So don't underestimate that network. And the third thing I want to mention, and then I promise I'll shut up, is don't be afraid to try to get into AIC early. I think, especially for me, so I'm just going to talk about my own experience. In the beginning, it always kind of seemed like the holy grail of, interpreting.
Totally. Yeah.
Don't get too close or you'll burn, and like Icarus, you'll, go down in flames. It's not that bad. People don't rip your head off. And I think especially if
Only some of them.
Only some of them. But I think especially
if
you...
It
we'll
wasn't
edit
me
it.
this time.
We'll fix it in post. And all the live people, you didn't hear this. But I think especially if you join early as a pre-candidate, you'll get a lot of opportunities presented much more quickly than if you didn't, because you're just on people's radar. And this doesn't only hold true for AIC. I believe this holds true for all associations. But I really experienced a shift when I joined AIC as a pre-candidate, because people just notice you differently in your local market. So don't be afraid of that. It's nothing crazy. It's an association. If you make mistakes and you'll learn from them, if you try to improve, if you're a good, decent person, you'll be fine.
So we've had a question in the YouTube comments where Rebecca Shorrock has asked, what's the biggest mistake each of the panelists have made? I think the second biggest mistake was me reading out that question.
Yes.
Yes. Mistakes? Who? Us? We?
Okay,
No.
I'm going to go kind of
okay.
meta here.
I'll go next.
I'll start this. My biggest mistake was thinking that I wasn't a business person because I didn't feel comfortable running my business the way that I'd seen other business people do it. Now I realized that actually, if I had from the beginning thought, how is it I want to run this? How is it I want to market? What do I naturally feel connected to doing? I would have been a lot better off, and I'd have saved myself, a lot of issues if I had started out saying, my business doesn't have to look like everyone else's. Right. what comes naturally to me, and it will take you a couple of years to find that out. But if I'd started with, my business doesn't have to look like everyone else's, I think I would have been much happier and probably had more jobs to begin with as well.
So let me go very hands-on. I'm not the meta person. I think one of my biggest mistakes, but then it turned out to be fine in the end, was when I moved from the UK to Germany. I didn't know my market, and that's why I said know your market, get to know your market. So from the UK, which was a very agency-dominated market, I went to Germany, which is a very non-agency dominated market, but there are agencies, and they're usually not the greatest. And so coming from one agency market into another market, I thought, oh, well, I'll just work for the agencies. And if you know the market, if I had known the market at that time, I would have known that they usually pay lower wages. It's not very encouraged to work for them, etc., etc. And I did it anyways until somebody told me, I know you're from the UK. They do it like that over there, which is fine because it works for their market. But over here, it's not really the market you want to be in. It's the gray market, that ominous whatever. Yeah, but they told me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't know that. It didn't even occur to me. Thank you for telling me, and I'll just kind of move in a different direction." I'm telling it now as a very calm story. It was a little bit dramatic for a few days there,
Of course it
but
was.
yeah, as it is in interpreting.
Yeah, I'm not sure about biggest mistake, but just to say I've made the classic mistakes is working alone for too long, taking on jobs I wasn't really qualified for. So,
I think for me, the biggest one was probably just being too hesitant in the beginning and a little bit intimidated by that's why I keep saying let's take some of the pressure out of it. Because for me, that was like a big blocker in the beginning. Just being so insecure of what I'm basically allowed to do and what not, instead of being a little bit more
word, though. Yeah.
confident and bold, without overstepping again, not going off the rails here or anything, but just to have a little bit more confidence and to try stuff, yeah, because it can really hold you back, I think.
Amen.
Amen, sister.
Exactly. I hope that was a big enough of a confession, I guess.
Yeah, Rebecca, did you get what you wanted?
From all of us.
They're all ashamed of us. The chat has stopped now.
Stop. They're like, no, they didn't.
I feel like I don't have an awesome story to tell because my experience is still too limited. So maybe I could talk about other business mistakes, so it's not really relevant for interpreting, I think.
So
yeah, that's fine.
It needs to be juicy, Sarah. Just get something juicy.
Is the money hidden in a chest somewhere?
But yeah, do we have lots of takeaways, I guess, as usual. So
tons.
As always,
oh my god, so many.
Kind of difficult to sort of summarize everything. But
it's the fountain of wisdom here.
But what I really liked is sort of what you just said, Sarah, is sort of be bold, don't be too intimidated by things, although that's different advice to give. It's easier for some and maybe more difficult for others. But also the whole point of be yourself. And I think Demi in her comments said have a voice, which I really liked, because it always sort of reminded me of the whole discussion about accent, which we didn't get into today, probably for the best, right, Jonathan? So
what would I know about accents?
I don't know. I was just seeing you there.
Maybe you know someone.
Yeah, maybe you know someone. Exactly. So I guess with that we can wrap it up, and maybe Rebecca, we do a TT confessional at some point, and we all anonymously share our biggest mistakes with the distorted voice. So
the dark side of it.
We can't be ever been a horror movie made about interpreting, has there?
Exactly. So it was great to have the YouTube listeners and viewers along for the ride. So maybe we do that again someday. And again, thanks to everyone who submitted stories and ideas and thoughts.
That was great.
Thanks,
interpreters and teachers. Thanks for that. And with that, we close this episode of the Troublesome Terps. And see you soon. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.